Forget the atomic spies. The most dangerous secret of the Cold War wasn't a formula, but a piece of ceramic, the mold for America's most powerful jet engine. In 1956, a trusted machinist, crippled by $50,000 in debt, sold that ceramic to the KGB. His name was Arthur Peterson, and his desperate choice handed the Soviets the key to the MiG-21, fundamentally changing the air war forever. Subscribe to my channel and write in the comments what time and where you're watching from.
The year was 1953. In the silent, antiseptic halls of the Central Intelligence Agency's fledgling headquarters, a new name, whispered with a mixture of hope and profound suspicion, began to circulate: Sergei Valeryevich Filatov. He was, allegedly, a genius physicist, a man who had helped shepherd the Soviet Union's nascent jet propulsion program, an indispensable cog in Moscow's machine for reaching aerodynamic parity with the West. Now, Filatov, or at least the man claiming to be him, had surfaced in Berlin, a ghost in the perpetually swirling fog of espionage that blanketed the divided city. His defection was a prize of staggering magnitude, but the CIA's veteran Russia desk officers, men whose careers were defined by the deep-seated paranoia of the Cold War, were wary. Moscow, they knew, did not simply misplace assets of this caliber. His story, however, was compelling. He claimed that the Soviet jet program, particularly the efforts to mass-produce powerful, high-thrust turbojets for fighters like the upcoming MiG-19, was facing a catastrophic technical hurdle: material science. Their alloys simply could not withstand the heat and stress required for sustained supersonic flight, leading to a disastrously low operational lifespan for their engines. The Soviet solution, Filatov claimed, was a massive, state-sponsored industrial espionage operation targeting the West's crown jewel, the American J57 engine. The J57, built by Pratt Whitney, was the engine that powered the Boeing B-52 Stratus Fortress, the North American F-100 Super Sabre, and, most critically, the revolutionary high-altitude Lockheed U-2 spy plane. It was a marvel of engineering, incorporating complex, multi-stage compression and turbine blade metallurgy that the Soviets could only dream of. Filatov's true worth, the CIA realized, was not just in his knowledge of Soviet weakness, but in his intimate understanding of the specific information they were seeking. He provided a list, a terrifyingly detailed blueprint of desired data, ranging from specific nickel superalloy compositions to the intricate cooling passage designs within the turbine section. The CIA's analysis concluded that the intelligence was too accurate, too timely, and too sensitive to be a Soviet plant. Filatov was real. He was immediately flown to a secure facility in Virginia, where his debriefing became the highest priority. The information he provided allowed the newly formed National Security Agency, NSA, to start a massive counter-espionage program, codenamed Operation Sentry. The goal was simple: identify the mole who was feeding the Soviets the secrets of the J57. The list of suspects was short, yet impossibly long. Thousands of engineers, technicians, and administrators at Pratt Whitney's sprawling East Hartford facility and its network of suppliers had access to fragments of the sensitive data. The NSA, working with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, began a painstaking process of cross-referencing Filatov's list of desired information with the access logs of the defense contractors. This was the era before digital records, meaning agents were sifting through millions of paper sign-out sheets, blueprints, and internal memoranda. The investigation dragged on for 2 years, yielding nothing but dead ends and a mountain of bureaucratic frustration. Meanwhile, The Soviets were visibly improving their engine technology, their new jets showing performance characteristics that seemed to defy the known limitations of their domestic material science. It was clear the leak was still active. Then, in late 1955, a tiny, almost insignificant anomaly emerged. A young FBI analyst, working late in a cramped Washington office, noticed a pattern in the destruction logs for obsolete engine tooling. Specifically, a set of highly complex, expensive ceramic core molds used in the casting of J57 turbine blades, the parts that faced the greatest heat, were routinely documented as being melted down and recycled. However, in 3 separate instances over an 18-month period, the documentation for the destruction process showed a slight but persistent discrepancy in weight. Not enough to raise an alarm in a routine audit, but enough to catch the eye of someone looking for the needle in the haystack. 3 sets of molds, worth millions in research and development, seemed to have simply vanished into thin air, signed off as destroyed by one man, Arthur Peterson, a respected 50-year-old lead machinist in the specialized tooling department at Pratt Whitney. Peterson was a model employee, a veteran of World War II, a devoted husband, and a pillar of his local church community in Connecticut. He had been with the company for 25 years. He was the least likely suspect. The FBI quietly began a full surveillance operation. They discovered that Peterson was leading a strangely expensive life for a machinist. His house had been remodeled twice in 5 years, his 2 daughters were attending expensive private colleges, and he had a peculiar hobby, competitive fishing in remote lakes in Quebec. This was the thread the FBI pulled. The break came in the summer of 1956. Peterson made one of his usual trips to a remote cabin on the shore of Lac Saint-Jean in Canada. The FBI surveillance team, enduring swarms of mosquitoes and the bitter silence of the Canadian wilderness, watched as Peterson performed his ritual. He fished for 2 days. On the 3rd day, a large, heavy-duty fishing boat, not registered locally, arrived at a secluded inlet near Peterson's cabin. A man disembarked carrying a large, innocuous-looking cooler. The 2 men met, exchanged a few words, and Peterson was seen handing the man a small, dark object wrapped in oiled paper. They shook hands, and the boat sped away. The FBI's Canadian counterparts intercepted the boat an hour later, citing a fictitious customs violation. The man in the boat was a known operative of the Soviet Komitet Gostarstvenoi Bezopasnosti, KGB, operating under a Canadian alias. The dark object was a perfectly machined, 3D printed ceramic positive mold, the exact part needed to cast a perfectly formed complete set of J57 turbine blades. It was not a blueprint, not a formula, but the physical key to mass production that confirmed the stunning reality. Peterson wasn't just copying documents. He was physically smuggling the molds for the most sensitive engine parts, claiming they were obsolete and slated for destruction. This explained the weight discrepancy and Filatov's intelligence. The Soviets weren't just seeking the knowledge, they were seeking the physical means to replicate the parts exactly, skipping years of material science research. Peterson was arrested upon his return to the U.S. His initial interrogation was met with silence, then a complete denial. He maintained his innocence for weeks. The turning point came when the FBI introduced a piece of evidence he never anticipated: a bank deposit slip, dated 1954, for $50,000 to an offshore account in the Bahamas. When confronted, Peterson broke. His confession was chilling in its banality. He wasn't a communist sympathizer. He didn't hate the United States. He was simply in debt. His wife had suffered a prolonged illness, and his private college tuition bills had ballooned. The KGB, operating with surgical precision, had identified his financial vulnerability through a local New York contact and offered him a simple, irresistible deal. The destruction molds were waste anyway, they said, a tiny scrap of ceramic. Why not exchange them for enough money to save his family? He justified it to himself as selling garbage, not secrets. Over 3 years, he had received approximately $150,000, a fortune at the time, in exchange for the physical, material science secrets that underpinned American air superiority. The case, which became known internally as the Peterson leak, was classified at the highest levels.